great presentation for you tonight. Welcome everyone joining us on Facebook Live. Welcome to Northern Kentucky History Hour. We will be getting started just shortly. So get ready for a great presentation on Payne Hollow. And it is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I am your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my office at the Behringer-Crawford Museum. Also joining me by the power of Zoom is BCM Visitor Services Associate and my co-host for the evening, Heather Cook, from her dorm in Worcester, Ohio. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph E. Hale Jr. Foundation, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. We would love to hear from our viewers tonight. So if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's go ahead and meet tonight's presenters. David Wicks is a chair of the Photo Board of Directors. He is also vice chair of the Ohio River Way and leader of the Nature-Based Recreation Working Group with the plan for the Ohio River Basin 2020 to 2025. He serves on the River City Paddle Sports and the Salt River Watershed Watch Boards to promote paddle sports safety, education, citizen science, and the enhancement of the Ohio River in our urban waterways. Dr. Wicks is on the editorial board of the International Journal, Applied Environmental Education and Communication, and currently is an adjunct professor with the University of Louisville's Honors Program. He retired several years ago as the director of the Jefferson County Public Schools and the University of Louisville Center for Environmental Education Center, where he directed educational programs at Black Acre State Nature Preserve, Kentucky's first state nature preserve. He is a past president of the North American Association for Environmental Education and served 3 times as president of the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education. So welcome, David.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Our next presenter is Jessica Whitehead. She moved to the Louisville area in 2011 after graduating with a bachelor's in art history and English from Hanover College. As curator of collections at the Kentucky Derby Museum, she works closely with the rest of the curatorial and education departments to promote a rich and diverse understanding of the Kentucky Derby and what it has meant and means to the Commonwealth and the country through exhibits and collections-based programming. She is currently writing a new history of the Kentucky Derby. In addition to her work at the museum, she is an independent writer, artist, and curator specializing in themes related to Ohio River Valley history, the natural world, and the arts. She has written the introduction to the recently published The Watercolors of Harlan Hubbard from the collection of Bill and Flo Cattle, and her first full book, Driftwood, Harlan Hubbard and the American Grain, is under contract with University Press of Kentucky to appear in 2023. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Before we get started, we're going to go ahead and do our quiz question. We have a quiz question. The first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat on Zoom or Facebook Live will win a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize, and most importantly, bragging rights. So tonight's question is, in what year did Harlan and Anna Hubbard camp at Payne Hollow for a summer before moving to the Hollow permanently in 1952? So go ahead and the first correct answer will actually win that. Leave your answers in the chat. And David and Jessica, if you are ready, we can go ahead and stop sharing our screen and get you started with your presentations.
All right. Let me It really is a pleasure to be here with the Filson Historicals, or with Behringer-Crawford, to talk about our work at Payne Hollow. Before we delve into our current endeavors, I'd just like to provide some background on the connections that Payne Hollow has with neighboring river towns and the Ohio River. I need to acknowledge the invaluable support of the Owsley Brown, the Second Family Foundation, along with over 200 others who have made Payne Hollow on the Ohio River possible. Many of Harlan Hubbard's articles were published in the Oyo anthologies. Titles like Build My Own Boat on the River Shore and Drift Down the Ohio. I Was Born with a Love for the River, Shantyboat Drifting. But one of my favorite articles is To Glide Around the Bend That Seems Endless, in which he really quotes this idea that the river is endless, and you can come up onto a bend and it seems like it really stops, but you come around the corner and there it is, just a beautiful blue mountains. Mr. Hubbard was a true lover of the Ohio River. John Willis, editor of the Oyo anthologies, writes that Shantyboat and Payne Hollow taken together with his art form, Mr. Hubbard was a gifted man, a painter, a writer, a musician, a gardener, someone who consciously set himself to live on the fringes of modern life. And the Oyo anthology, which was Hubbard, is really a collection of about 100 works about the Ohio River and its valleys by writers, poets, and dedicated river enthusiasts. The Oyo series demonstrates that Mr. Hubbard's connections to the literary figures of the Ohio River Valley were very strong, despite his reputation as a solitary man living along the Ohio River, often by himself in a canoe. That is, of course, until he met Anna, and then they floated in a shantyboat. Payne Hollow at River Mile 567 is on the forming of a national water trail called the Ohio Riverway that I serve as co-chair. Interestingly, the Owsley Brown, the Second Family Foundation, is also a significant sponsor. We began developing this trail about 3 years ago, and it goes from Portsmouth, Ohio, down to Louisville and on to West Point. We believe this existing network is really helping Payne Hollow develop strong and meaningful partnerships up and down the river. Just as Mr. Hubbard did 70 years ago, we're promoting that personal exploration of the Ohio River. We're working with our 40+ river towns to reconnect with the Ohio River. And, Mr. Hubbard is known for his simple, self-sufficient lifestyle, his artistic vision of the Ohio River as accessible to all. Hubbard believed that the Ohio River should be protected and preserved as a natural resource, that the river is used for transportation, recreation, and a source of clean water and food. But he also believed that the river was and is a source of inspiration and beauty. The Ohio Riverway is working to re-engage with river towns to celebrate the Ohio River and the creative spirit embodied by Anna and Harlan Hubbard. Communities from Portsmouth at the confluence of the Scioto River and the Ohio is the beginning of the Ohio Riverway. They recently received significant dollars to transform their waterfront and connections to the river. Interestingly, the mayor, Sean Dunn, is a big advocate of Burning Man, and they've just received a Burning Man grant to explore art on the river. Just imagine, Burning Man on the Ohio River. Going downstream, Vanceburg is bringing the showboat Majestic to celebrate Ohio River music. Interestingly, before the Hubbards settled at Payne Hollow, they scouted out land near Vanceburg. Coming downstream at Maysville, they really have re-energized with a new public art and a dynamic downtown, all with a focus on the river. The interesting thing about Maysville is there's another historic home there, the place of Colonel Charles Young, who commanded an army regiment during the Spanish-American War. Afterwards, he became the first African-American superintendent of a U.S. national park. Hubbard visited many times and did a woodcut of the waterfront. And these woodcuts come from the Harlan Hubbard journals, 1929 to 1944. Augusta is said to be one of the prettiest towns in Kentucky, and it's the home of the Rosemary Clooney House, owned by Stephen and Heather French Henry. They are also supporters of Payne Hollow. New Richmond is the home of the Cardboard Boat Museum and is the central focus of the Underground Railroad. And Thomas More Biological Field Station is the oldest university research center on the Ohio River. They really are kindred spirits and really are trying to work with us at Payne Hollow to explore the natural area that the 100 acres that we now own. Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky, these are some maps that Mr. Hubbard created. And this is certainly where, he met Anna and built their shantyboat on the banks. And certainly, as everybody knows up there, Fort Thomas Forest Conservancy maintains the other Hubbard Art Studio. And I unfortunately just missed the reception for the artist in residence that's using it. Coming on downstream, Davie, Indiana has a huge relationship with Louisville and with the Ohio River for sure. Another Ohio River artist, Anne Farnsley, interacted with the Hubbards, and they just had a wonderful exhibit of her work. Madison and Hanover were frequently visited by the Hubbards, and they had deep relationships with many and spent much time at the Hanover University Library. 35 miles downstream from Payne Hollow is Louisville, Kentucky, and the Falls of the Ohio. Currently, the ending point of the Ohio Riverway is West Point, at the confluence of the Salt River and the Ohio River. These rivertown communities admire and are inspired and want to build upon the Hubbards' love of the river and provide opportunities to experience the solitude, the beauty, and the adventure that the Ohio River has to offer. We really look forward to working with them. We've been talking a lot about the deep connection that the Hubbards had with the Ohio River and neighboring river towns. To explore it further, check out Morgan Atkinson's documentary, Wonder, The Lives of Anna and Harlan Hubbard. It's live on our, you can stream it on our webpage, Payne Hollow on the ohio.org. Morgan is currently working on another documentary on the entire 981 miles of the Ohio River, called Ohio, the Life and Death and Rebirth of the Beautiful River, which further develops and tells the story of the Ohio River. And we're certainly seeking support for his continued work. You know, Payne Hollow on the Ohio was officially incorporated and received its 501c3 status over this past summer. Many thanks to the pro bono work of the firm Frost, Brown and Todd. A 4-person board was established, and Ed Steinbach and Joe Wallach and Jessica Whitehead, our next speaker. Recently, we elected Tommy Thurmendinger, a Northern Kentucky lawyer specializing in real estate, on the board, and he's also on the board of the Behringer-Crawford Museum. The Payne Hollow Advisory Board was established, and we have over 20 members representing Louisville, Southern Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. And we're very thankful that Lori is working with us. Our work is driven by intense long-range planning and is broken into a variety of committees. And I'm just going to briefly mention several of them, because we're always looking for support, not only financial, which is certainly very important, but volunteer and time and energy. If you're interested, certainly talk with us. Put your name in the chat, and we'd love to follow up. You know, one of the most important pieces really is our administration, finance, and fundraising, and that's how we keep it together. This map here sort of shows this land right here. We just are signing a lease to purchase for it. So now we'll have the 61 acres of Payne Hollow and 39 acres adjacent to it, which is going to serve as our base camp. Elizabeth is chair of our outreach committee, and they're planning off-site activities for Payne Hollow. As we're under construction and renovation, and so no restroom facilities. Over our next period of time, we're going to do talks like this. One exciting piece is that in June there is going to be a premiere of a film called The Shantyboat, and it floats from Frankfurt on down to Louisville, and the name of the shantyboat is the H&A Hubbard. And so they were all inspired by the work of Mr. Hubbard. So there in June 15th, we'll have a premiere of that coming up at the Speed Art Museum. Buildings and grounds, Mose Putney and Joe Wallach, Joanne Weeder we're cleaning up the property. We're having a big project this coming week. We're assessing the needs, and we're planning for the restoration of the buildings and the internal walking paths. We've met with the Kentucky Heritage Council and the Kentucky State Historic Preservation Office to ensure that our renovations of the Hubbards home and art studio meet and exceed national standards. We're continuing to develop the Payne Hollow ecological database developed by Deb White. She's a retired Kentucky State botanist. After 2 surveys, interestingly, she's identified 120 unique species and with an abundance of edible and medicinal plants. This summer, we're pleased to announce that Payne Hollow is partnering with the University of Louisville Speed School on an NSF grant called Community Engaged Ecosystem Research. We'll have several graduate students and undergraduate students doing ecological surveys and service learning out on site this summer. The organization of Payne Hollow on the Ohio really is only 6 months old. We have much to do and relationships and partnerships to develop. It is our intent to work with all the Ohio river towns, with Trimble County, with educational institutions, museums, and art galleries. We're seeking to secure access on the Indiana side for book access. Our goal really is to promote the legacy of the Hubbards and their lifestyle, to preserve the land and the buildings, and to respect and love the Ohio River. We believe in being neighborly, open, honest, and patient. And if you really wish to become more involved, sign up with us or visit PayneHollowontheOhio.org. I'd like to introduce my good friend and next speaker, Jessica Whitehead, who you've heard. She really is our archivist who takes care of all of the Hubbard related material that's still there and the building. So it's just a pleasure to turn the show over to Jessica.
Well, thank you, David. I'm really happy to be here with everyone. And as David already mentioned, our website is just chock full with all kinds of resources about the Hubbards, about their lives, both before and after building Payne Hollow. So I'm not going to spend too much of our remaining time reviewing their lives prior to 1943. But I will suffice it to say that both Harlan and Anna Hubbard throughout their entire lives were remarkably creative souls. And they had a unique chemistry that allowed them to build a life together that they found very meaningful, that they found very beautiful, and that they found very responsible and self-sufficient. Anna was a college-educated classical musician and librarian before she met Harlan, and she brought a certain practical elegance to this radical lifestyle that they would develop together. And Harlan, as David mentioned, was a multi-talented gentleman. He was a trained artist. He was an aspiring writer. He was an avid musician, a skilled contractor, and an all-around outdoorsman and forager. He really was seeking an off-the-grid existence from a very early age that he could be proud of, and that he felt wasn't tying him too significantly to society, which he found at times very distasteful. And Harlan and Anna met later in life. They married in their 40s. But I always like to say that their second act together was filled perhaps with more adventure and more purpose than maybe 20 ordinary lifetimes. And all of it culminated with this home that they built together in Trimble County, Kentucky, which is Payne Hollow. And that's why we're here today to talk about this. And there at Payne Hollow, Harlan and Anna were sustainability pioneers. They were living on the fringe of society in their handcrafted homestead on the Ohio River. They lived without electricity. They grew as much and foraged for as much of their food as they possibly could. And they lived lives of creative hard work and truly beautiful simplicity. And even though they were somewhat dissimilar in temperament and personality at times, they each valued solitude. They valued quietness, and they also valued freedom to live simply and sustainably close to nature, but also apart from the expectations of the modern world. And Payne Hollow had not been their first experiment in this vein. And David, I'll ask you to change the slide here. So immediately after they were married in 1943, and a clever trick for Harlan Hubbard is that he was born in 1900. So when I say a date, you know what age he is, which is very helpful. So immediately after their marriage in 1943, the Hubbards began to consider how they wanted to spend their lives together. And unlike more traditional couples who might have settled into a very quotidian mid-century lifestyle with jobs, with a mortgage, with family, Harlan and Anna decided to become shantyboaters. And they built themselves a small houseboat on the shore of the Ohio River at Brent, which is in northern Kentucky, nearby where you all are. And while they were building this, they lived in a makeshift shack, just a shack on the shore. And this shantyboat dream had been something that was really long held by Harlan, but not necessarily by Anna. She had to adapt to this lifestyle. And Harlan actually writes in Shantyboat of Anna, he says, "She was not at all the shantyboat type, and she had no river in her upbringing. Indeed, she had scarcely taken a good look at the Ohio River, though librarian in Cincinnati for many years, until I introduced her to it. She was town-bred, to all appearances of a conservative mind, with high standards of respectability and cleanliness, the least likely person to accept a rough life on the muddy river. Yet she showed no hesitation. In fact, she encouraged the immediate undertaking of the shantyboat venture after I had told her of my leanings in that direction." And so between 1944 and 1950, the Hubbards lived on their shantyboat, drifting down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers each winter, and then setting camp at a new location each summer, eventually making their way 1,385 miles down both the Ohio and the Mississippi River to New Orleans. There they sold their shantyboat for scrap. They bought a car and they fashioned a rough camping trailer and hitched it to the back of their car and traveled around the United States for another 2 years before they finally returned to Kentucky in 1952. And although they knew that they were going to be actively setting aside this shantyboat lifestyle that they had built for themselves, their experiences on the shantyboat had really fundamentally informed their next steps. Harlan actually wrote, "Our shantyboat life need not come to an end, even though we had lost our boat. The shantyboat spirit would prevail in whatever circumstance." And so in late May 1952, Harlan and Anna began making excursions up and down the river to find a place to put down roots. And David, if you want to change the slide for me there. And their first stops yielded really nothing but disappointment until they returned to the place where they had made their summer camp at a place called Payne's Landing. And as you all may have seen in the chat, that the correct answer for that first summer that they stayed at Payne Hollow before making it their permanent home was in 1947. And so they made this camp, their first summer camp of their shantyboat years, there at Payne's Landing. And they renewed their acquaintance there when they came back in 1952 while they were looking for land for a permanent settlement. They renewed their acquaintance with some of the farmers who had land above the hollow. And one of those men was named Owen Hammond. And they hiked down into Payne's Landing, into Payne Hollow with him on June 17th, 1952. And of this return, Harlan wrote in his journal, "After a while, we walked down to Payne Hollow, down to the river, by the familiar trail. All is just about as we left it. It seems overgrown, but perhaps if we had first seen it in June instead of in February, it would have seemed the same then." And Owen Hammond ended up helping them negotiate a rental agreement with the owner of the land to rent a portion of the bottom land there at Payne Hollow as a temporary campsite. And on June 20th, Owen Hammond helped them by hitching their camping trailer they had built down in New Orleans to the back of his trailer and hauled it all the way down the treacherous, about mile-long trail down to the riverbank through the woods. And once they had their camping trailer down there and they started to set up their camp, the Hubbards set to work planting their first garden, adding pole beans and corn alongside naturally growing crops that they were noticing. And Harlan notes in his journal, "We picked purslane and lamb's quarter and poke from the rows and edges of our cornfield, our one source of vegetables now." And in July, they end up adding beans and beets and mustard greens and begin sleeping in this abandoned tobacco barn that's nearby. And Harlan also begins making plans to build them a new flatboat, a flat-bottomed John boat that would enhance their ability to both fish and to put trot lines out into the water and to transport supplies across the river instead of having to hike things up and down through the hollow. And as David mentioned, Harlan was from Fort Thomas and still had friends and connections there. And so in August of that year, when they were spending a few days back in Fort Thomas visiting, thieves raided the barn that they were staying in and stole a number of their possessions, including a number of Harlan's prized tools, which prompted Harlan to write in his journal, "Perhaps someday we'll have a shelter into which we can crawl so that we will not feel so insecure." And in fact, 2 days later, they ended up negotiating on September 12th to sign an agreement with Ansel McCord, who was the owner of this land from whom they had been renting, to purchase 7 acres of land there at Payne Hollow and begin building their own home there. So they officially became owners of land at Payne Hollow. And on September 17th, Harlan describes some of the process of trying to do the really difficult surveying work that they needed to do in order to understand this land that they had just bought. And he says, "Yesterday, a bright, windy day, we did some surveying with plumb line and framing square to get some marks on the hillside, how many feet above the pool stage. By fastening the square with one arm plumb and sighting along the other, a mark on a tree toward the river was obtained. This height I measured by climbing a tree and dropping a line. Then we set up the square again at the base of this tree, a tall locust. Another mark was taken on a cottonwood near the river, and this was measured. We figured our original mark was 65 feet above pool, 20 feet above the 1884 flood, and perhaps 10 above the 1937. And of course, Harlan and Anna had lived through the 1937 flood and what devastation that had done to river communities. Next slide, please. And he continued as they kept thinking about how they were going to build this house, where they were going to situate it on the property. He said, "This morning, Anna and I were up on the hillside trying to evolve a house in our minds and place it there. It's an exciting business to be building a boat and a house together. This is almost more than I can manage, not only the work to be done, but the creative planning, the house especially. It takes considerable imagination to build on that difficult and uncompromising hillside where there is no road, not even a path. Everything will have to be backpacked to the site." And of course, that's something that us working at Payne Hollow are still dealing with as well. But the first iteration of the house, what you're seeing here on the screen is a great picture by one of our advisors, John Fettig, from the 1970s. But the first iteration of the house wasn't the entirety of this physical plant you're seeing here. The first was really only a single room cabin that was toward the back of the present day structure you see here. And it was something that they were able to construct rather quickly before the coldest winter weather arrived that year in 1952. And so they constructed the single room cabin, which was just about the size of their shantyboat. And they moved from this abandoned tobacco barn where they had felt so unsafe into this unfinished cabin on November 12th, 1952. And Harlan reflected on their progress, perhaps reading back to journal entries from a month earlier when he had said, "Anna worked with me this afternoon. We raised the other corner posts, and after she went down to get supper, I put a beam across one side, which will support the rafters. The work proceeds very slowly, but so it should be. The building of a house is a serious rite, and each step is significant. You are creating more than a shelter. It will become part of you." And of course, so Payne Hollow became for the Hubbards. Next slide, please. So Harlan and Anna passed away in the mid to late 1980s. And they left their Payne Hollow property that they had lived in since 1952 in the care of their hired hand, their caretaker, and really a kindred spirit, a man named Paul Hassfurter. And he's shown in this photo that's sitting on the mantelpiece at Payne Hollow here talking to Harlan. And next slide. Hassfurter was a faithful steward of Payne Hollow for decades. After the death of the Hubbards, until his own health prevented him from continuing the truly considerable maintenance on the property. And so our organization originally formed with the intention of purchasing the property from Hassfurter and restoring the hollow structures and land to their historic Hubbard era condition. And as David has described to you, our mission has met with truly extraordinary enthusiasm and support, which allowed us to purchase the property in record time and to really begin the important work ahead. Next slide. So what is this important work that we've been doing? And what have we been up to in the past 6 months since purchasing the property? Well, there are a couple key things that I'll highlight for you here. And of course, David's mentioned a score more of other projects we have going, but some of our main priorities have been identifying and safeguarding artifacts from both the Hubbard and the Hassfurter eras of Payne Hollow. Cleaning up the property, ensuring that the structures are both safe and dry and that the trails are as passable and clear as possible for those of us who are doing the work down there. And we've also been conducting lots of surveys and doing lots of documentation of the site to help us understand what our historic and our natural assets are there at Payne Hollow. Next slide. And so our first order of business really was to start a thorough cleanup and sort of the property initially, both inside and out, to try and begin the process of identifying what was there of historic significance from Harlan and Anna and from Paul. And here you can see after one of our first cleanup sorts, this is the iconic front room there at the home at Payne Hollow with its beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows. And as you may or may not know, Harlan Hubbard gave the majority of his and Anna's papers to the University of Louisville before his death. And he also gave sizable collections both to the Behringer-Crawford, our hosts, and to Hanover College in near Madison, Indiana. He also gave many paintings to the executor of his artistic estate, who was Bill Cadell. But what remains at Payne Hollow is still truly extensive, and that's what we've been working on as we're sorting. Next slide, please. And with each visit to Payne Hollow, all of us have been finding new treasures, like these photographs and notes of steamboats and other vessels that have traveled on the Ohio, that were from Harlan's personal research collection. And Harlan, as you may or may not know, was enamored with steamboats, with vessels from this other era of the Ohio River. And he had a truly encyclopedic knowledge of them from years of observing river traffic, from years of researching river vessels. And he would have used an archive of photographs and notes like this to assist him in his paintings or of commissions that he was completing. He often was contacted by folks who wanted him to paint a specific boat for them. Of course, steamboats were one of his favorite subjects to paint. And also during Paul Hassfurder's time working and living there at Payne Hollow, both he and visitors that the Hubbards and Hassfurder had at the house took and shared lots of photographs of the site. Some of them are, as you see here, actually of Harlan, some of Anna as well, which are wonderful to see. But some of them are also just of the property, of the structures, and they establish really important baselines for what the buildings and the landscapes looked like and how they evolved from the 1970s, 80s, and beyond. Next slide. Payne Hollow also still contains not only some of the art supplies and tools of Paul Hassfurder, who lived there more recently, but its contents are also giving us wonderful insight into the supplies that Harlan Hubbard used throughout his career, which is wonderful for those like me who are trying to research his career in great depth. And most of these were found in this, which is sort of a multi-purpose structure, often called the studio, the workshop, the wood shop. It also housed the privy for the main house and the tool shed, wood shed, and of course it housed Harlan's painting studio as well. And perhaps one of the most exciting finds is pictured here on the screen that we found in the painting studio. And this is a really amazing thumb box, wooden paint box of Harlan Hubbard's that still had pencils in it. It still had pigments and sketches. And on the front of the box is a little metal plaque that is engraved with Harlan Hubbard's name and his address in Fort Thomas on Highland Avenue, where his studio was in Fort Thomas. So we know that this box would have dated to sometime after 1923 and sometime before moving away from that address in the 1940s. So it's quite possible that this is the paint box that Harlan toted with him all over the hills of Kenton County, over the Ohio River on his canoeing trips. So it's a really exciting artifact find. And then in addition to the paint box and its contents, we've also retrieved a number of his art supplies, which is exciting. And we've been able to identify those from historic photos of the studio, like this one, which again is taken by one of our advisors, John Fettig. And many of the brushes and the pigments that you see here are now part of our collection, which is very exciting, as well as Harlan's woodcutting tools and all kinds of other supplies. Now, visual art was not the only creative discipline that was practiced at Payne Hollow, of course. And even though Anna didn't paint or draw and often famously said that she wasn't creative, which was not true, she was an extremely superior musician. And she played both cello and piano. Harlan played violin and viola, but Anna played both cello and piano, and the Hubbards had 2 different pianos at the Payne Hollow property during their time there, which I can tell you all about sometime if you want to hear that story. But the piano, the great Steinway grand piano that became very famous from photographs of the Hubbards that were published in the Courier Journal and in the Cincinnati Enquirer. That piano, which was a beloved possession of Anna's, was removed before Harlan's death in 1988. So that's not still there at the property. But our team is in possession of Anna's beloved cello, which is very exciting. And we're also in possession of a trove of sheet music, like you see here, and you can see up in the corner. Anna has written Mrs. Harlan Hubbard, very small up there in the corner. There are just hundreds of pieces of sheet music that we are cataloging from Payne Hollow. And if you are curious and you do have a Spotify account, you can search for the playlist Payne Hollow Radio. And I've been dropping in recordings of some of their famous music that they like to play together that we've been finding as we're cataloging the music here. And both Harlan and Anna Hubbard were also avid readers. And in fact, they read to one another almost every day, and not just in English. Believe it or not, they read regularly in both French and German to one another, which is very impressive. And a number of the books that they read were borrowed, as David has mentioned, from the Hanover College Library, with whom they had a wonderful and long-standing relationship. But Payne Hollow is also still filled with their books. And that's been something that has been wonderful for us to go through, not only to see what kinds of books they prized enough to keep, but also Anna, who of course was trained as a librarian, left us a wonderful and comprehensive shelf list of the most important books that they loved and that they owned. That also includes the dates that they read these books, and occasionally has reading notes, which is very exciting. And a few examples of what we're cataloging are this fabulous Velázquez monograph that was inscribed to Harlan Hubbard from his brother Frank, who was one of his earliest inspirations as an artist. Velázquez was a favorite artist, and Frank knew that. Frank gave him this volume. And Frank also was the person who taught Harlan how to draw and how to paint. And we found inside this book tucked this beautiful watercolor of a geranium. And we believe this is probably one of the earliest Harlan Hubbard watercolors to have been created, which is very exciting. Next slide. Now, one of the most instructive of Anna's books from Payne Hollow is related to her incredible skill as a non-traditional gourmet chef, as a gourmet experimenter, and nutritionist for both herself and for her husband. Her favorite cookbook, some of you may be familiar with this book, remember this on the shelves of your own home, was Adele Davis's Let's Cook It Right. And her really well-thumbed copy of this that we found at Payne Hollow is just stuffed with recipes and with notes that really help us gain very instructive insight into the day-to-day food and health habits of the Hubbards while they were at Payne Hollow, which is very exciting. And she also kept inside it dated menus with calorie counts and with the lists of supplements that they used. And two of my favorite, I should say, pieces of paper that were in this cookbook, you can see here on your screen. The first is a menu of what they ate on April 11th, 1955. Their breakfast consisted of wheat, raisins, tiger milk, and a handful of soybeans each. And possibly my very favorite is this note that she left, that if she and Harlan happened to be feeling grumpy or cowardly, apprehensive, mentally confused, or forgetful, they really needed to eat more yeast. And how well this actually worked, I don't know, but I'm very tempted to try and eat some yeast when I'm feeling grumpy myself. And of course, the Hubbard Library and the notes that were tucked inside these books also helped us better understand the landscape and the kinds of plants that were growing there that Harlan and Anna not only grew, but also felt were instructive to their sustainable lifestyle. And David mentioned that Deb White has been conducting a flora research survey there at Payne Hollow, and that's been really fun to cross-reference with Harlan's journals and with his written works to see what kinds of wild foods are matching up to what Deb is finding on the property today. And next slide. Resources, many research resources are available that can give us some clues into what the Hubbards like to forage, and especially, of course, Harlan's own journals. But here you'll see some really great books that both Harlan and Anna Hubbard used again and again that were filled with really useful information for safely foraging and cooking meals in a non-traditional kitchen using non-traditional ingredients, and some handwritten notes that they made as they were reading through these books are very interesting to see. Next slide. And we also have journal entries, of course, that are helping us identify very specific things that can be foraged in this riparian landscape of the Ohio River. Like this one from Harlan in 1953, where he describes foraging for Apios americana, which is the American groundnut, sometimes called hopness. And he writes in his journal, "Groundnuts have been one of our good foods this spring. They grow in abundance along the Indiana shore across from here. One can pick up a great stringy mass of them sometimes. We have learned to only eat the thin-skinned, light-colored ones, probably of new growth. We steam them, and with butter and salt, they are delicious." And we're also learning loads about the gardens at Payne Hollow. And we haven't found seeds that are from the Hubbard era. It would be very unlikely they would be viable at this point anyway, but we have found a number of seeds and varieties that were saved by Paul Hassfurter. And a few more horticulturally minded of our advisors and volunteers have offered to try starting some of these seeds and see if we can't create a heritage seed bank of the kinds of crops that were grown once at Payne Hollow. And it would really be impossible to highlight in this amount of time all of the incredible things that we're learning at Payne Hollow as we sort through the contents of these structures. And we're really looking forward to eventually sharing more and more results of this long cataloging process with you when it's completed. And it's one of our goals to become a resource for future Hubbard researchers and scholars in the coming years. And we also look forward to the insight that the collection can give us into the life cycle of Payne Hollow as we start our renovations and as we work with state agencies to apply for National Historic Register status for Payne Hollow. And last, and perhaps most important as we moved into the winter of the past year, we were very concerned with keeping the structures and their contents safe and dry until we really have a restoration plan solidly in place and are beginning that historic preservation process. And so David mentioned our wonderful buildings and grounds crew. They've been hard at work sealing and patching and trying to keep unwanted critters and moisture out of the structures as we're working. And our team has also been working hard to keep the site from becoming too overgrown. Next slide, please. And so this past summer and fall, and now as we're moving into spring, a lot of sweat and labor from our committee members has been going into removing a number of fallen trees from the trails, taking down trees that are putting risk to the structures there at Payne Hollow. And this is, of course, no small feat, because when possible, we're trying to follow the Hubbardian way and to make sure that we try to eschew the use of electricity and use hand tools whenever is possible. So what's next for Payne Hollow in 2023 and 2024? Well, as you see, we've got tons of ongoing tasks that are happening right now. But we're also starting to plan for what our future might look like at the site. And as David mentioned, right now we are closed for renovations, but once those renovations are complete, we want to be able to provide access for the community in some way and to be a resource. So we've been talking about how we want to be a resource for the community and where we see a need. And that's to us in environmental stewardship, in education, and in creative expression. And where environmental stewardship is concerned, we have a really wonderful opportunity to possibly make Payne Hollow a protected landscape, which is something that I know is very important to many of us. And this is well aligned with the Hubbardian impulse, with what Harlan and Anna liked to see, a touch of wildness in their home. And Harlan actually says in his book, Payne Hollow, "May it long remain as it is, not merely for our selfish enjoyment, but for the satisfaction it must give many people to know that there is such a place. Few wild pockets are left along the river these days." And so, as David alluded earlier, we really hope to explore lots of partnerships to assess this possibility and to see how we might make Payne Hollow a learning hub for riparian ecology. And then, of course, one facet of our future education and programming, we want to use the fascinating scientific, archaeological, cultural, and social context of the surrounding area to help us understand Payne Hollow better in a historic context as well. And so we think some of the future projects might be conducting archaeological surveys on the property in order to learn more about Payne Hollow's connection to Indigenous cultures, or to working with local history organizations to connect Payne Hollow history to that of nearby Preston Plantation, which you see is right there next to Payne Hollow. Or to historic Madison across the river and their connections to the Underground Railroad. So lots of opportunities there. And then, of course, perhaps most naturally, we really believe that the ongoing legacy of Payne Hollow has to pay tribute to the artistic, the literary, and the musical legacy of Harlan and Anna Hubbard and their successor, Paul Hassfurter. And we see lots of opportunities to create artist, writer, and musician residencies at Payne Hollow. Of course, we're learning a lot from the experiences of the Fort Thomas Forest Conservancy and the Harlan Hubbard Studio and Nature Preserve there in Fort Thomas and their inaugural artist in residency program. We see opportunities for workshops and other kinds of educational programming that's related to art and culture and folklore of the Ohio Valley. And we also see lots of opportunities to make partnerships that allow us to understand and to continue to proliferate the wide-ranging impact that the life of Harlan and Anna Hubbard can and has had on contemporary lives. So we've jammed a lot of information into this presentation. So I want to encourage you again that our website, www.paynehollowontheohio.org, is a great resource to not only learn more about the Hubbards and their lives, but also to learn more about what we're doing and to see lots of videos and more presentations. And it's also a great way to keep abreast of any news, to make contacts with us, and to donate to us, which is always appreciated. So please take some time to visit that site. But I want to close our program with some words from Harlan Hubbard, who, of course, was such a magical wordsmith. And he wrote this in his journal about 70 years ago. And these words really, to me, embody why Payne Hollow on the Ohio believes that its work matters. And so Harlan Hubbard wrote, "Today we came back to Payne Landing, back home. Here I become alive again, and dormant sensations and faculties begin to function. I come out of doors too, as definitely as if I had left a closed room. I feel an inward joy. All that I had dreamed was true, is true. The earth is fair, more fair than I had known or imagined. This was a warm day, still and misty, a faint sunlight filtering through. We drove over the hills and down along the river, watching the well-known features of this winter landscape. The recession of trees into the blue distance, the faintly green hillsides, many shades of tawny and russet, the sharp white sycamores, the slanting lines of hilly country. After passing Carrollton and branching off to follow the river down, we become eager to reach the end of our journey. Already the country is closer, more real. The known farmsteads pass by, the road turns, and we leave it for gravel. It is like stepping down from pavement onto the cool earth." Thank you very much for listening to us tonight.
Thank you guys so much for such an excellent presentation. I want to go ahead and address first the trivia question, which you mentioned. We did have a winner. So Heather, that was John, correct?
Yeah, John Fettig. So congratulations on getting the trivia question. We'll get your prize to you in the mail.
Okay. And then we had a couple questions I had seen in the chat. I know that someone asked if you were open to the public. I know that you said that you're closed for renovations. Were you open prior to the renovations? Were you open to the public?
We just purchased the property really last fall, and there are no restroom facilities, and the trail is in poor shape. And so we plan this summer to really work hard on the restoration and the development of the infrastructure. And we hope really in 2024 to start having some programs. Now, there are several smaller groups that are part of a management initiative where we do bird studies. And, interestingly, Mr. Hubbard identified almost 53 bird species that he saw in his journals. But we have the Beckham Bird Club going on now. We have Hanover doing an insect study. We have U of L doing, so we have some of this ecological management work going on. Regular programs, probably 2024. And that's just if everything goes according to plan. Sometimes the river gets in the way, it doesn't behave every day.
Well, I was curious if there were any neighbors nearby or if you have any problem to worry about with vandalism or trespassing on the area.
We have a very good neighbors, wonderful relationship. The property adjacent to us upstream was purchased recently by a family that owns a fair amount of land in Trimble County, and they live in Indianapolis, and they're very interested in forest health. We're working downstream with Preston Plantation, and interestingly, with LG&E, with the Trimble County plant, we're providing for a dumpster, or not a big barge and a tugboat and a crane to come and haul away a lot of the trash, because it's a roadless site. But we're going to do a massive cleanup with our Sanko. And so we believe we are good neighbors. And, but we've been there less than a year. So it's going to take time.
Okay. I also saw we had another question. I believe it was from Brewster Rhodes. He wanted to know what they paid for the 7 acres.
I'd have to look back in my my files, Brewster, but I'll be happy to get that information to you. But there will be lots of cool details like that coming out in the biography that I'm working on too, that will be released. Actually, it's now going to be in 2024, but there will be a wealth of fun facts like that that are very specific for you.
You know, one thing, and thank you, Brewster, for that question. It's always interesting how prices have changed over the years. But Brewster is bear of the Ohio River Way. And one of the things we really are looking forward to is our relationships with river towns and other museums, just like with Behringer-Crawford. Vivi has a wonderful museum on life on the Ohio. Louisville has the Filson, and Cincinnati had, you know, on and on and on, and how we can have a relationship that's focused on the Ohio River Valley and the tremendous historical and artistic, you know, tradition that we have. We're looking forward to working with you, Behringer-Crawford folks, more.
As are we. I want to also add that Brewster said, excellent presentation, and he thanked you guys. He said to check out the 1980 film about the working river with footage of the Hubbards, and he put the minute mark in the chat there, 14-minute mark. And he said it brings to life all that David and Jessica described. And he's got a link there that's in the chat too, if anybody wants to check that out. We also had Kathy said she met these extraordinary folks when she was about 15 years old. She rode a horse to the top of the trail and hiked down and met them.
That's great.
It's just always amazing to me the number of folks in Trimble County who have interacted with the Hubbards over the years. We have several, we have one third grader wrote a wonderful and made a video about her visit to the Hubbards, and it just was a classic. And people have saved this information over the years, and it's just, you know, Trimble County is a neighborly place. And the Hubbards were neighborly. And so it's just fascinating to get to know that whole aspect of it.
Kathy also said she had an impromptu lunch with Anna, served in lovely crystal glass. She was impressed with her elegance and true welcoming, and was very welcoming to her as a stranger. I want to also add, so that we've had some people ask about volunteering and helping out. How would they go about doing that again? Because I can put a link. Should they go to your website?
Yeah, if you go to our website and there's a contact form where you can send in your information to us, and what we'll do is we'll add you to our mailing list, and we can let you know as soon as we have volunteer opportunities available. And also, if you have specific questions for any of us that we haven't covered here that you think of, please reach out and ask us. We love to talk about the Hubbards whenever possible, and so we'd be happy to answer your questions there too.
And just realize that we're all volunteers, and so you have to be patient. And so it's not that we're ignoring anybody, but we'd rather be out on the property than dealing with email. You know, and so we will get back with you, but we're all volunteers as of now. So who knows what the future will bear.
Okay, and what was that website again? So we can put that in the chat.
It's called Payne Hollow on the Ohio.org.
All right, Heather, can you put that in the chat?
Ohio.org.
Okay, I think we're about out of time, but thank you two so much for such an excellent presentation. We do have some promotions to add here at the end. So if Heather could get that ready, because we have 3 brand new exhibits on display right now. We have the Kentucky Craft Luminaries sharing the stories, the Art of Fashion, Faye Applegarth Maddox, and Brad Davis, Harlan Hubbard, artist in residence. So the Kentucky Craft Luminaries exhibit, if you want to go ahead and skip, Heather, is a collaboration with the Kentucky Craft History and Education Association that features artworks and stories of some of the state's most recognized craft artists. Includes weaving, pottery, glass, quilting, stringed instruments, wooden folk art, and more. And then our next one is The Art of Fashion. The Art of Fashion highlights Faye Applegarth Maddox's works from 1945 to 1965. As a Northern Kentucky fashion plate artist, her illustrations were used to promote sale items at the local department stores, such as Shillitoe's and McAlbin's. We've got dresses, coats, hats, and other fashion items on display. And lastly, From His Kayak to the Banks of the River, Brad Davis has created a diverse body of work that's now on display alongside select Harlan Hubbard's works in Brad Davis, Harlan Hubbard, Artist in Residence. This exhibition is a showcase of Davis's creations in the Harlan Hubbard Artist Residency, which is hosted by the Harlan Hubbard Studio and Nature Preserve and the Fort Thomas Forest Conservancy in conjunction with Behringer-Crawford Museum. So all three of these exhibits are included with museum admission and are on display right now. So we encourage you to come check them out. Also, our next Chippy Sensational Kids Club is going to be all about mom on Thursday, May 11th at 11 a.m. in Making Mother's Day Surprises. This program is for children ages 3 to 5 and their caregivers. You can contact Kim at the museum at 859-491-4003 and get registered for that. There are also still a few spots left in our summer camps. We have 2 summer camps this summer, one for children ages 4 to 6, that's June 13th through the 15th. And that one, the adventurers will learn while playing games involving magical creatures and enchanted forests. The other one is for kids going in grades 2nd through 5th, and that's June 27th through the 30th. And kids can learn how to be conservation-minded protectors of wildlife. Each camp includes a yearly membership to the museum. So go ahead and you can call the museum at 491-4003 to register your little camper. Lastly, our next Northern Kentucky History Hour is going to be on Wednesday, April 19th with The Streetcar Lines of Kentucky with Charles Bogart. Then on May 3rd, we have Gary Johnson returning with the Monitor-class ironclads at the dawn of industrialized warfare. So please tune into those. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest curators chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. They are also available on our YouTube channel at BC Museum. So please like and subscribe. That's all we're going to have time for this evening. Thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until then, take care, everyone, and good night. Thank you, everyone. Especially thank you to David and Jessica and Heather. Thank you all so much for a great evening of history at home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure it is.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.